Hello friends and neighbors, and welcome to a special episode of What's All the Fuss About? We've now looked at numbers 91 through 100, the bottom 10 movies on AFI's top 100 list. And it only took us 16 months. Aren't we awesome? And by us, I mean me. So since we have reached this milestone, and also because it's been a while since I actually started this project, I thought that we would take a quick look at the reviews that we have already done so far. So here's a quick rundown of numbers 91 through 100 on the AFI Top 100 list.
Roman, I'm a Jew. We have this problem.
And I thank you.
You like our owl?
All the way you do it
There
right.
needs
Royale with cheese.
What's he talking about?
Proud of you.
Same quote as the rest of them.
They're boring!
Almost irresistible.
Number 100 was Ben-Hur, the epic film about a Jewish outcast who was given hope in his journey home from an act of kindness from a Nazarene called Jesus. The film was hugely visual at a time before computer-animated effects, is best known for the intense chariot race toward the end, and broke the record of Academy Award wins with 11, a record only tied by Titanic and Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. A great film if you can devote the 4 hours necessary to watch it. I gave it a worth renting. Number 99 was Toy Story, the animated feature about the behind-the-scenes life of your childhood toys and the beginning of Pixar's stellar tradition of excellent computer-animated films. This film could have easily rested on the laurels of being the first fully computer-animated feature film, but also told a good story with memorable characters and a creative premise that led to 2 popular and critically acclaimed sequels. Enjoyable for both kids and adults, I gave it a worth owning. Number 98 was Yankee Doodle Dandy, a musical tribute to the life and work of the man who owned Broadway, George M. Cohan. Functioning itself very much like a George M. Cohan musical, this feel-good movie gave America a much-needed dose of patriotism, reminding them of the importance of music to our sense of self and way of life. Though not a particularly deep look at Cohan's life, it is a fitting tribute and at times a very meaningful film, with a great deal of talented singing and dancing. I gave it a worth renting. Number 97 was Blade Runner, the sci-fi thriller about a futuristic world where a police force is charged with taking out robots that are so realistic they can almost pass for human. The film was very short on words, telling its story largely through its dark and yet detailed picture of the world it created. Though the visuals are stunning, and it did inspire many sci-fi films that followed, the film suffers from a lack of originality, telling a story that sounds like it comes right out of an Isaac Asimov novel. And though it's still a good story and well told, I would have liked to have seen them tackle something more original. I gave it a worth renting. Number 96 was Do the Right Thing, a Spike Lee film about growing racial tensions in an ethnically diverse neighborhood on a swelteringly hot day. The film follows a number of different characters suffering from the heat, and shows us the building tension in such a way that it allows us to feel it as well. Though an uncomfortable, unpleasant, and often ugly film to watch, the film offers us an experience, with each and every shot carefully planned to help us feel what the characters are feeling without ever telling us what we should feel or think. I felt it was a fine example of exemplary filmmaking and gave the film an ultimate recommendation. Though admittedly I don't think that you can say example of exemplary filmmaking, but whatever. Number 95 was The Last Picture Show, a look at the lives of several people living in the small, dying town of Anarene, Texas. Much like Do the Right Thing, it's not so much a story as it is an observation of a year in the life of this town. Through a number of innovative cinematic techniques, we learn about these people and their fruitless search for meaning in a town that offers very little. The film is an authentic picture of the emptiness of a life without meaning, and I gave it a worth owning. Number 94 was Pulp Fiction, the dialogue-driven film from Quentin Tarantino that is still being parsed by film students today. Though the film is known for its dialogue, it is not the dialogue that drives the story. The dialogue establishes character and atmosphere and sounds more natural than similar movies that are entirely plot-driven. We watch a series of events in which 3 characters are faced with a life-saving decision, and the choice they make and how they make it shows us more about who they are. A great film from a great director, I gave it a worth owning. Number 93 was The French Connection, a movie based on the real-life story of a narcotics officer, Popeye Doyle, and his obsessive search for the French leader of a drug-smuggling ring. The movie is known for one of the most intense car chases in cinema, with Doyle chasing an elevated train in midday traffic. The whole movie has a feel of realism, as though we're watching a documentary or a real-life recording rather than a film, but suffers from a lack of interesting characters, which kept me, personally, from enjoying it. I gave it a worth sitting through. Number 92 was Goodfellas, a Martin Scorsese portrait of the mob as seen through the eyes of Irish-American Henry Hill, a lifelong gangster. We see the story of his life in the gang, and in true Scorsese style, we don't watch the story so much as we experience it. The direction makes us feel as though we are there in the story, and the view of the mob is an ambivalent one, being very much like a family, but a violent and cutthroat one. We watch our 3 main characters let the glamour of the mob go to their heads, make bad decisions, and ultimately pay for them. A film with excellent acting, directing, and editing, I gave it a worth owning. Number 91 was Sophie's Choice, a look at a Holocaust survivor and her turbulent relationship with an unstable eccentric, as seen through the eyes of an innocent aspiring writer from the South. Though he's the one telling the story, we learn about this young woman and the demons she fights daily, as well as the demons of her lover, Nathan. Meryl Streep's dynamic performance as Sophie at different points of her life is what makes this movie memorable. The story is beautifully acted and beautifully told, and I gave it a worth owning. And in addition to those 10 films, we also looked at 3 films from the Lost 23, or the 23 films that were dropped from the original Top 100 list when they did the revision in 2007. Formerly at number 99 was Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, the story of an older couple whose daughter announces her sudden engagement to a black man. Though addressing the issue of interracial marriages, what the film is really about is the relationships between generations, and whether parents should protect their children from the changing world, or allow their children to change with it. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn star as the older couple, both giving brilliant performances as they try to cope with their daughter's decision and come to a decision of their own. Simplicity in the directing is what brings this brilliantly written screenplay to life, and I gave it an ultimate recommendation. Formerly at number 92 was A Place in the Sun, the film version of the book-turned-stage play An American Tragedy. Montgomery Clift plays a young man working in his rich uncle's factory and is torn between a romance with a rich socialite and a fellow worker who is pregnant with his child. The man leads a double life, carrying on with both women and compounding deception until there is no turning back from an ultimately tragic end. The cinematography of this story is beautifully done, and the story doesn't shirk away from the heavier issues this story addresses. Some tissues might be necessary for this one, but I gave it a worth owning. And formerly at number 91 was My Fair Lady, the movie musical adaptation of the story Pygmalion. Audrey Hepburn plays Eliza Doolittle, an uneducated flower seller who linguist Henry Higgins claims he can pass as a rich socialite just by teaching her how to speak properly. The story itself is a strong one, with subtle commentary on the dichotomy between rich and poor, and a well-developed and complicated relationship between Eliza and Higgins. Unfortunately, the movie suffers from some of the pitfalls of its genre, forcing many of the musical numbers where they are unnecessary and having music that is, at best, mediocre. Good, but not as good as it might have been. I gave it a worth renting. And those are the 13 films that we've looked at thus far, and that's how the AFI views them. But what about how I view them? Well, if you're interested, here is how I would re-rank these 13 films.
Have you ever been to Poughkeepsie? You've been to Poughkeepsie, haven't you?
Replicants are like any other machine. They're either a benefit or a hazard.
Oh, you ain't dirty. I washed my face and hands before I come on, did?
My sister thanks you, and I thank you.
Give us our freedom.
And you learn the 2 greatest things in life.
Front office. That's the last we'll ever see of Mr. George Eastman.
I found my moving buddy.
Thank you. Thank you all.
More than 40 years ago.
You're boring! Morning!
Check out the big brain on Brad.
You're playing it.
Explain it, Mr. Drake.
You can? Well, let's have it.
That's it?
That's it.
I got it. I'm gone.
And that does it for this special episode of What's All the Fuss About. I'm probably going to do a recap every 10 movies or so, but let me know if you like the recap and if you'd like me to keep doing it. And as I said last time, the next movie we'll be looking at will be number 90 on the list, Swing Time, and until then, I'm the Mad Hatter. Take care. And as I said last time, the next movie. I would do a quick recap of the videos that... Movies! They're not videos. This is a video. This is a video. What we're talking about are movies. There's a distinction.